super short. It's only really 6 slides of content. And so yesterday was objects 1, today's objects 2, right? We're gonna talk a lot more about objects. And really today's lecture is just one concept. And if you get it really quickly, then awesome. Yeah, Lawrence?
Sorry, I referred to this yesterday. Are the objects we're talking about what's often referred to in object-oriented programming, or is it talking about something else?
No, a little bit different. That's more about classes and inheritance, and it's about like that's more like data, or this is more like data type. That's more what you're talking about is like a little bit different model. In this case, when we talk about objects, it's just in JavaScript. There's this data type called an object. It does these things. Although I guess you can make the extension. It's probably related in some way, but for our purposes, no. For us, like when we talk about objects, it's just like, hey, let's talk about like the unique features and the things you're gonna do with the object data type in JavaScript. Okay, cool. So yesterday we found out all these ways to create an object, set the values, whatever, right? And one thing I told you was, hey, objects have no length, and there's no sense of order. You can't say like, let me look at the first key, then the second key, then the third key, right? In fact, we saw very explicitly that when we try to set multiple keys to the same object, JavaScript just overrides the values, right? If you say, was it baseball team Mets equals this, and later you do baseball team Mets equals that, it'll just replace this with that, right? It's not going to keep 2 separate versions to figure out which one you want. It's say, nope, whatever the last thing you told me, that's what the value is. So, but, like in this case, then there is this, like, with an array, we can easily say, well, let's just go through the list from the first element to the last element and read everything, right? In an object, it's a little bit trickier to do, but there are obviously a lot of cases when we still want to do it, right? Like earlier today, if I want to make sure that my dictionary is comprehensive, that I do have a letter for every single letter of the alphabet, and I want to read through it, how do I do that? So because objects have no length, we can't use our traditional for loop like var I equals 0, I is less than array.length, I plus plus, or iterate through it. We can't do that. But there is a new syntax or a new way for us to go through objects. And that answer is the in operator. Or, oh, I'm sorry, I jumped forward a little bit. One really quick thing, what in does is in is going to give you back a boolean, and in is shorthand for has own property. And so if I do, if in this case example here we have Aladdin in Disney movies, what it does is it's basically, so it's like if key in object, it will actually go to that object and look for that key. And if the key exists, then it'll return back true. And if it doesn't exist, it will return back false. So this is like the check to make sure if a certain key is in the particular object. Pretty straightforward, right? We wrote that check ourselves earlier, right? Like if this triple equals undefined, whatever it is, we get this. So the way then for us to loop through an object is on line 7 there, is we still use our for loop, but the syntax is now a little bit different. Inside our parentheses, we no longer do the var I equals 0 set an index because, well, there's no more index, right? But what it does is JavaScript has this way to do it where we still use the in operator, but if we do for var key in key bucket, it's not quite clear if looking at it directly, but what it's really doing is it's actually going through and iterating for you every single key in the object. Okay, so if I want to loop through, and in this case, I want to, in the example we have here, right? If I want to go through key 1, key 2, or if I want to go through this key bucket object and print out every single thing, key is going to be the key, right? So the value is just going to be the object, or in this case, key bucket index at key. And so when I do that and I print a console log, what line 7 is saying is for every key, console log out, or for every key in key bucket, do line 8, which is print out the key name plus a key bucket name. So so yeah, this is a for in operator that you hear a lot about, and this is a way that we go through an object. Obviously, this is very not flexible, right? In terms of when we use this goes through every single key in the object. Remember how in a for loop or in an array we can say, hey, let's go to every other number, let's start at index 6 and only go to the end, or let's stop at index 3, whatever it is. For in, there is not that sense of order or schedule, because once again, with an object, there is no sense of order or schedule, right? So if we want to go through everything, we got to go through everything. There's no way to determine a subset. Well, it will always run for every single key. So if your object has 20 keys, it will run 20 times. You can't tell it to stop after round 10. Or there are probably ways to, but it's like more contrived, right? You can do like a break. You can do a counter, so every time you run it, you increment counter by 1, and you say, hey, if counter reaches this number, break out of the loop. That could be a way to do it. But like, it's a little bit more contrived. Like normally you use a for in loop to go through everything, and normally when you go through an object, you do want to go through everything, right? Objects are kind of all or one. Really, it's like you either want to get one value or you want to get all the values. There's very rarely you want to say like, hey, let me get like, you know how like with an array you can slice like let me get the third to the sixth element. You don't really do that for objects. This is not a very common practice. Something smells like ammonia up here. Like, yeah, like all of a sudden. Hopefully it's fine. Sorry. Anywho, that's why I've been making these faces. Like, okay, yeah. So that's the for in notation. Yeah, Lawrence.
I'm still unclear. What is key being checked? Right, so I get that the value key is being checked against whether or not it exists.
Mm-hmm.
But what's causing the key to have value? Because right now, all I see is that the empty variable is being checked against whether or not it exists.
Okay, so let's be very like just clear here when we say like value, right? So are you asking? So let's just use line 10 as example, right? Like use the example code here. Here in the console log, we're console logging out key, right? That's what this one is. And then here we're doing value. That's what this one is, right? So key here is a variable, right? And so is your question like, what does this key represent?
No, my question is what's giving key a value? Because right now, all it looks like to me is that we created an empty variable.
Define an empty variable.
Like its value is currently null.
Is the nature of the loop itself. Because you put for loops in there.
Let's talk about the condition inside the for loop as a separate entity.
Okay, yeah.
Like key doesn't equal anything. It's just null.
Right, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean that's just the way that the in operator works in the context of a for loop. Is that like what it does is it's like, so what it's really doing it's basically going to key object. It's saying give me an array of all your keys, right? And then it's actually iterating through that keys array. And so whereas before you had I equals 0, you now basically have key equals the elements, each key in that array.
Got it. So if I'm understanding this, in is looking at key and saying, all right, now your value is the first key I found, or in this case, key 1, I guess. And then it does whatever the constant is. And it says, all right, here's the next key I found.
Yep.
And this happens from top to bottom.
No. So this is why I'm saying like keys have no order, or sorry, objects you can't assume to have order, and that's why in this case, so the reason why I'm not giving you a straight answer is because there's not a guaranteed way of ordering keys, and what I mean by that is so I actually looked this up previously of why there is. It's actually a fairly small nuance, but just know that in some scenarios, if I do for key in key bucket, for example, in Chrome, it will print out these things in a certain order. If I do it in Internet Explorer, it could give it out to me in a different order.
Got it.
And so you can't depend on what that order is. And you should not assume that there is an order.
Okay. So what causes it to print in order in this case? Why isn't it 3, 1, 2, for example? Or is that just out of the scope of this?
It's not out of the scope of this. Usually what JavaScript does is I think it does it in the order in which it was created.
Yeah.
but there are cases in which that order is thrown out of whack.
Okay, so in a usage sense, it doesn't have an order, but in just a reading sense, it's going top to bottom within the object.
Top to bottom is I don't necessarily like that idea because it kind of
Of declaration.
sure, yeah. So by default, if you declare everything as like in sequence, it will usually print out based on which key was declared first. But like I said, like you can think of that as a rough rule of thumb, but like I wouldn't follow that guideline too explicitly because it might be wrong sometimes.
Yeah. Could you give an example of what causes the order to go out of whack?
Yeah, if you delete a key, and then if you want to replace a key with another value, or if you want to replace a key altogether, then you're changing then you're basically changing order, right? And the reason why that change is not consistent is because the way, like I said, Internet Explorer handles that change is different than the way Chrome handles that change. And so it's not even like, oh, JavaScript is going to do this. It's like Chrome does this, Internet Explorer does this, and there's like it's like you really don't have a way to reconcile it. I mean, there is a way to, but it's like you really don't want to reconcile the two, right? And also, and this is just like, and usually like I said, I mean, JavaScript could have added some order, like some predefined order to this, but the whole idea of using an object is that you don't have an order. If order matters to you, use an array. That's kind of where this falls back to. Yeah. Becky said.
So just to be clear, you can just like in the for loop or for in loop.
Yep.
The var key you could substitute like
For anything.
key for anything.
Yeah, I give you.
Still do the same.
Yep, var Becky equals four bar Becky and key bucket, and you would just print out console log key is Becky, and then key bucket index Becky. Any variable you want. It's just another variable.
Is this for loop unique, or can we play with it like we would any other for loop? Like, could we say var key in bucket and end true?
No.
Yeah, so this for loop should never be tampered with.
Yeah, no, I mean you really don't like JavaScript is making some assumptions for you, and so you really need to play in the confines of that assumption, right? Like if you actually just want to pull an array of keys, you can do your own kind of whatever custom you want with it. Like there is a function for getting all the keys out of an array, right? Or sorry, out of an object. And then if you want, you can iterate yourself through that array manually to do it. This is by far like the cleanest, most common way people go through objects, right? Because once again, if you want an order, you use something else. You only use this when you don't care about order.
Wait, I don't understand that. So if you're saying for key, we could use any word, but the word you said the other yesterday was key for the value or whatever it is before this colon, which then in the object. Basically, yesterday when we started talking about objects, we build an object, we have a key, and then we have value.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think it was confusing because in that particular example, they used the word key, and then you're saying we didn't even need to use the word key.
We didn't need to use the word key.
I thought that was her question. Is that we didn't need to use key, and you said you could use var Becky for.
Yeah, you use. I mean, it's just a variable for whatever, right? So okay, so this is a code, right? So to Becky's question, it's like, oh, we could call this Becky, right? And we could do it this way too. Becky equals this, and then key equals this, and this will still properly run, right? Here we're just calling a variable, right? So this variable can be whatever as long as we use it inside of here. We recognize that this variable Becky is created and it represents the string of the key. Okay, so let's just call this let's call this property. Or you know what? Let's just call this, let's call this lead dict. Right? We have our letter A here, we have our letter B here. Oof. B here, and we have our letter C here, right? And then here we can say this is an exclamation mark, this is an ampersand, and this is a pound sign. Cool? So this object is totally valid. We just need to change this to lead dict, and we change this to lead dict, okay? So now that I've changed every single thing, every single variable in this function, when I run it, I now get this.
But you're asking the loop to only run if it identifies that variable.
If it what?
You're asking the loop to run only if it identifies that property exists in the
Yep.
object. But from what we're seeing, it doesn't exist in the object. So how does it run? Because we don't see a property that's called.
Oh yeah, so
It's like I mean, you're just introducing it.
right. So we're not looking for Becky in LeadDict, right? So let me okay. Becky, sorry Becky, we're using your name now, kind of like flagrantly to. Okay, so Becky in LeadDict. Oh God. Okay. Does not equal LeadDict index Becky. Okay, these two are fundamentally different things, not at all related, right? This gives you back the value of the Becky key in LeadDict, right? So if we say something like, like, hey, what's the LeadDict value of A? This will get back to me the exclamation mark, right? On the other hand, if I do, A in LeadDict, what will this give me? Nope. What will this give me? Nope. Nope. Okay, back true. Right. So if we just go back to this slide right up here, the last slide, really, right? Oh God, let me do that. Those two lines right there, right? The in operator by default helps us verify if a certain key is in this, right? So this will give me true. Because guess what? In my LeadDict object, there is this key and A, and it exists, and it has a value, so it's true. Now, when we wrap this inside of a for loop, so like, how should I say this? So this is a kind of like a hacky way of representing this. So this is by no means like how JavaScript does it, but hopefully it makes sense, right? Let's just say, like I say, if I say, var, like LeadDict keys equals, and obviously not JavaScript here, but I'll say all the keys in the LeadDict, in the LeadDict object, okay? And so in that sense, LeadDict is equal to an array of string A, string B, string C. Okay, oh, sorry. LeadDict keys. Can you all work with me on this? Okay, let's say I create this magical new variable called LeadDict keys, and it gives me an array of all the keys of LeadDict. And for now, we'll just say in a randomized order. Okay, order doesn't matter, right? This could very well be C, or so it could be B, comma A, comma C, right? Order does not, like, how we get to this order, not important, but it's just this magical variable we just created here magically is an array of all the keys, right? Then, instead, what we're doing is this. We're saying, hey, now that we have an array, we can go back to like the for loop format that we've been so familiar with in the past. We can do var I equals 0. I is less than LeadDict keys.length. I plus plus. Cool. And in this case, then what we'll say is Becky is equal to LeadDict keys index I. So this whole thing is kind of a rough approximation of what for var Becky in LeadDict is doing. Cool. right? So Becky, that's why I'm saying Becky can be anything, right? We can call that variable name anything. The name doesn't matter, right? The name intrinsically has no value. Sorry, that was a terrible phrasing of it. To use the word value too. Okay. Becky can be whatever we want to call it because we're just doing bar Becky equals, right? The value of Becky is fixed if we use a for loop, right? The value of Becky is going to be whatever the keys are, or whatever the value of the elements of those keys are.
So it's a placeholder basically.
Right, it's a variable, right? It's I mean all variables are basically placeholders, right? And all Becky is in this case, like what the variable represents, all it is it's gonna when you go through this loop, Becky is gonna take turns representing each key.
So then how would you make a loop like this return false then if it's not dependent on the key being of a certain name?
Well, so like I said, if you look at this construct, right, it ends when we reach. If you have 10 keys, it will run 10 times, right? And if I have an array of all 10 keys, my array has like 10, right? That will follow this for loop, right? So how many different values Becky takes on? It's a direct result of how many keys an object has, right? Which is kind of what we want back, right? All we're saying is, hey, can you do something for every single key in this object? Kind of good. Kind of makes sense now.
You're sort of creating like a meta key of the keys for use like in later code or something.
Kind of. I mean, look, if you what should we call it? How about this? If if this is super like tricky, or if like you're just trying to really get a hang of it, feel free to do this implementation of it for a prompt or two, right? Which is, all right, let me look for a function that gets me all the keys of a particular object. That function does exist. Feel free to Google it. It's on the Mozilla documentation, I promise you, right? Feel free to Google that, get the array and iterate over through it yourself, right? It will work. It will get you the same thing. We just use this implementation because this is just a shorthand, right? In the same way that we want to iterate through everything in an array, we'll go through this, I think, on Saturday's class, but there's a shorthand for that too, right? So a lot of what JavaScript, what you guys are learning now is, okay, foundationally, this is how JavaScript works. This is an object, this is an array, this is whatever, right? And the idea is like, okay, these are the building blocks of JavaScript. Cool. Now, as you use it more and more, you'll find yourself doing things that are kind of over and over again, like super like redundant, right? So for example, if I was to ask you, hey, can you find the length of an array for me without using dot length? You're like, yeah, I'll just set a counter at 0, go through the entire array somehow, that's right, and then count it at the very end, right, and give you back. It's like, yeah, you could do that whenever you want, right? But isn't dot length so much more convenient, right? Once you understand what dot length gives you, you just use dot length. You understand how it works, but it's like a convenience factor, right? That's what this is too, right? This is a convenience. In some ways, think of it as a convenience factor, right? This helps you do whatever. This helps you do what like this is kind of doing in like 6 lines, what you do in like 1 line here, right? So these are convenience factors. And if you're just like really like saying like, okay, like you know what, like right now, I really want to know how it works underneath the hood, or I really want to kind of just like see a raw, like feel free to do this, feel free to build this, right? Same with index of, right? Index of, people are like, well, people search arrays and strings so often, let's just give them a function that does it. You guys built it yourselves, right? You saw how it worked. And if every time you write, every time you want to search an array or a string, you're like, I really want to write the search function myself, do it. Totally cool, right? But if you ever like, okay, I'm pretty confident that I know how this works, I don't use index up because it's like this is so much easier to write than me write my own like 10-line thing of looking for every element. Up to you, right? Same thing here. There are other ways to do this. We do this to make it shorthand, to make it really convenient for you. And the reason for this, once again, is because usually with an object, right, you're either accessing one value or you're accessing all the values. If you want to access a subset or like, and that subset is defined by order, then use an array, right? Then you're almost using the wrong data type for what you're trying to do here. And that's why this just kind of builds in this assumption that, want every single key in the array because otherwise you would use something else. Yeah, Becky.
So just taking this one step further, let's say you want to know how many keys are in an object.
Mhm.
Could you basically once you define for var Becky and leave it or whatever, if you return Becky, would you get a number of how many keys there are? Or
Well, if I just console log out Becky, what would I get here?
yeah, that's what I'm asking.
This will tell me the keys,
Okay.
right? So on the first loop, Becky's value is A. On the second loop, Becky's value is B. On the third loop, Becky's value is C, right? So I guess the short answer is no. It doesn't really tell me how much it is. But if I have something like called var counter here equals 0, right? And in here, I don't even care about what Becky is, right? Like I don't even care what Becky's value is, right? At this point, it's just did the loop run or not. I do counter plus plus, plus plus, and then down here, let me console.log out Becky. Or no, sorry, counter, I get 3, right? So that's how I would do it, right? Kind of like in a for loop, right? Like in some cases, you might want to use the I variable. Other cases, you might not. Same thing here. If you want to use Becky or you want to use a variable, if you want to use a key, use it. If not, whatever. No one cares, right? It's going to run X number of times. It's going to run how many every keys you have number of times, but it doesn't care if you use that variable or not. It's just like every other variable, right? It's a placeholder. It's a way to make your life easier. Okay, cool. Everyone comfortable now? Somewhat comfortable with this for in operator, right? It's just a way for you to loop through things, and it gives you the key. And once you have the key, the idea is, well, if I have the object and I have the key, it should be super easy to get the value now, right? It's just object index key equals value, right? So it gives you enough so that like you can feel pretty confident in being able to access any part of this object really. Yeah. So this is not anything new that we haven't talked about in the past 20 minutes or so. So it just loops over the properties of an object. We put an arbitrary order there because we really don't want to tie your understanding of we don't want you to make any assumptions about the order in which the objects, in which the properties are being fed back in. And really, there's not really like any need for it to be in order. And if you need it to be in order, then you probably wouldn't use a for loop in the first place. You probably need to get the keys individually. You would get the keys kind of separately. It's through a different method. And once again, keys are always strings, so you can just kind of make that assumption whenever you do see someone using a key, right? Someone's like, oh, like the key on my object is, and you don't need to say, oh, what data type is your key? It's always going to be a string no matter what. So here, another example of looping through an object. Here we have a Disney movies, big object, and then each movie is a smaller object, and we just do for var movie in this big object, and at some point movie is going to be the name of the key, which is Aladdin, Lion King, and Toy Story, and then because it's a nested object, we do Disney movies, index movie, and then we also do index release or dot release, whatever you want. Cool. Any questions on this? Yeah, Becky.
Just as a review of just the syntax for it, so I get all this, but when you say dot release, if you're going to use bracket notation, would the release have to be in quotation marks?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, Danielle. Yep. It will convert it into a string before it stores it.
Is that just because it's in an object, or all object values considered string?
No, sorry.
Okay.
So with an object, you have a key and a value. Okay. Right. So if I go back to oh no, not yet. So here, lead diff, right? The key is A, B, or C. The value is exclamation mark, at symbol, or pound sign.
And say that the instead of an exclamation and at sign.
Well, what I'm saying is, so if the keys are A, B, and C, and the values are exclamation point, at symbol, and pound sign, the keys can only be strings. The values can be whatever you want it to be.
So it could be 1, 2, and 3.
Right. It could be one. That could be one. For B, this could be like an object of itself, right? It could be like hey David, and then it could have whatever, something like true, right? The values can be whatever you want it to be. The keys have to be a string. I'm sorry.
The output would still be numerical in value as well, like A1, the 1 actually
Is a number, yes.
Okay.
So only the keys have to be strings. Yep.
Okay, so just syntax again. So basically for for the object lead diff, if you take the keys out of quotes, it's the exact same thing. Right?
Yep.
Identical?
Yep. JavaScript will convert this into a string for you, and you can't change that.
Back on that slide with Aladdin and the movies and stuff.
Yeah. Let me find that again. Oh shoot. Oh no, did I exit out of it?
Maybe I can just ask.
Let me just ask. I'll try to find it somehow.
Okay, yeah. I mean, basically, it was just taking bar movie and putting that in and running it through. Yeah. So basically, could I also do the same thing bar film, right? Underneath
Yep.
it, bar, and then I would just basically it would just log out everything the same exact thing, but it would put.
Well-
It would be the same exact thing. It wouldn't change anything if I used bar film.
Yep. You would need so basically everywhere where you use movie as a variable, you just replace it with film, and it does the same exact thing. It's just a variable name. It could be anything.
What would be an application for this? Like, how would I guess we're trying to have problems, but I mean, like, what I'm just trying to think conceptually, like, how would this be useful to moving forward? Like, I just assign a variable to it, or
I mean, so is your higher level question why won't we ever need to loop through everything in an object?
it'll probably be answered with no problems. I guess I was just trying to find like I mean, I'm understanding it, I'm accepting it, but I'm just wondering like, okay, how would this kind of work in action, like in a problem or something? But I guess we'll see that. So.
Yeah. I mean, like there's
Yes, of course.
there's like the short answer is like there's plenty of reasons why we need to go through an object, right? Like let's say like even for something like this, right? You want to know just hey, like if Disney movies represents like my personal collection of Disney movies, and you want to know hey, what movies does David have? I mean, this is the only way to do it, really, right? Like so, there's plenty of reasons why we would want to iterate through an object, and there's like almost like too many to like iterating through objects is a very common practice. It's by no means like this like obscure thing that like you're learning just for sake of learning. Like it's very common.
Oh no, I wasn't
Yep.
saying that it wouldn't be. I just was never mind.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So lastly, one-liner. If you ever want to delete a property or delete a key, you literally do delete, my object and then key. You could use dot notation. You could use bracket notation. You could use whatever you want. It will delete both the key and the corresponding value in the object. That's it. Having said that, usually you don't want to delete keys or like deleting a value. Okay, so I guess a distinction, right? Deleting a value is different than deleting a key. If you want to, you never really delete a value. What you really do is you overwrite the value, right? Like if key A is equal to exclamation mark, and you want to kind of delete that value, you can say, hey, I want to remove it, make it back to null. Well, you just set object key A equals null, right? Delete is really for when you want to delete the key too. Like you don't want anyone to see this key ever again. There are use cases for it. They're just less common. And so because, of where computers are nowadays, people are usually okay with just letting kind of unused keys hang around. The only reason, one of the main reasons people would want to delete a key, obviously, is there anything security related, right? Like if your password is a key, and the password is a value, then you want to delete that before you pass on the object to the next person, right? So, um, and the other thing that people also usually do is rather than delete keys, let's say you have like a key with 20, or you have an object with 20 different keys, and people are like, oh, I need to delete 15 of them. Usually people just recreate the object and pick the keys that they want and create like another object and then send that through. So deleting keys is doable, it's just not very common, just for what it's worth. And that's it.